Today we have a lot of problems in the coming up generation with sense of loneliness, sense of being isolated. They are on their own thing and they do things and they expect to be cared for. And what they should know, and what actually this book shows, the power of caring, is that even if you care for others, you expand yourself. You start understanding that yourself is not limited in this physical body within that skin that you have. Yourself is something much deeper. The book says, it's not about caring more, it's about caring better. And selfishness is to say, I matter, you don't matter. Whereas true reality, true care is, I matter too. You matter, but I matter too. And that's how I can help you better. Because I take care of myself, and then I can care about you.
It's becoming easier than ever to numb yourself from other people, to numb yourself from your own self. And we numb ourselves in so many different ways. We numb ourselves through our phones, our devices, with distractions. I think we numb ourselves to the people whom we live with. But I think if you've ever had someone that you have met who has truly cared for you, or if you have truly shown up for someone else and truly cared for them, then you know how transformative it can be. I think the world right now needs a revolution in how much we care for one another. In a world that's becoming more and more depersonalized, it's caring that's going to give us the fulfillment, the happiness, the joy that we truly crave and need. And I think this form of caring is something that's quite deep. It's spiritual in its very nature. And that's what we're going to explore in this episode. It's called The Power of Caring. And I'm really happy that this episode of The Dharmic Life is being joined by me, my co-host Kashyap as always, but we're also joined by Dr. Tony Nader. Dr. Tony Nader is an internationally renowned author. He's a Harvard and MIT trained neuroscientist, a medical doctor, and he's also the international leader of the Transcendental Meditation program. And he has a new book out called The Power of Caring, where he talks about what it actually means to care, what it actually means to be cared for, and how the root of that is based on a deep spiritual foundation. I hope you find this conversation interesting, and I hope you find it enlightening. Namaste and welcome to the BAPS Better Living podcast. This is the Dharmic Life series, and I'll see you in the episode.
Dr. Nader, you come to the US, you're from Lebanon, you're doing incredible research, you're advancing in the ranks of academia, you're advancing in the field of medicine, you're going to MIT, you're going to Harvard Medical School's teaching hospital, you're doing work at Mass General Hospital. And amidst all of this, what you're really interested in is this idea of consciousness, this understanding of how it all comes together. And through this curiosity, you encounter Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and you begin this exploration, you begin this relationship with him and his teachings in some ways that really changes your life. And I think it would be really interesting for our viewers to understand what it's like for someone to come from a very different cultural background. Lebanon, you have this very medical heavy training from the US, and you encounter this very Eastern way of looking at the world. What was that like?
It's really an adventure, a journey that grew gradually. I come from a family of doctors, and it's a vocation for helping others. But I was always asking myself the bigger questions about purpose, about meaning, about suffering, about, civil war, which I have had to go through even as a doctor, where I've seen amazing things in a negative way, but also amazing survival, amazing perseverance. And there is this dual aspect of our human nature, why we do what we do, why we persevere, why we try to be resilient, and why we suffer, why we make our decisions, and how we can overcome that. So my search was for the bigger answers. And I thought that human mind, human physiology can give us these answers. So I actually started studying psychiatry, but I felt it was for a kind of an extreme case of instability. But the majority of people live within a certain range of normal, and yet they make decisions that they are not always leading to greater happiness, to more peace and harmony in society. So I went into medicine and research, trying to understand the nervous system, hormones, what creates our awareness, what makes us decide what we decide, why we are here. And so on the path, as you beautifully, kindly described, I met Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Transcendental Meditation program. And I discovered that it gives something so much more complete and coherent and fulfilling, both on the mind level as well as on the physical level, on the level of the body, of well-being, of health, etc. And so in search for doing something positive, I thought my colleagues are working in the lab, they're looking for this molecule or this chemical component. We use this drug or that drug, which is fabulous, not to ever reduce that importance. It has led to great development in humanity's ability to fight disease and create conditions for a better life. But in terms of a holistic perspective, mainly as a preventative approach, but also as settling the individual back into herself or himself, these mental techniques that the ancient traditions have, and particularly in this case the Vedic tradition, the transcendental meditation, the yogic techniques, etc., they have such a deep contribution that I have seen on myself personally first, on my parents, on my relatives, on my friends, and consistently through scientific research, not just anecdotes, but scientific research supporting that value. So I thought I could experience that personally, but could also give myself a chance to understand more what it is about and how it works. And so I took what was seemingly just at the end of my fellowship and work at MIT and my PhD, etc. I took a week of kind of free time to go and explore things with Maharishi. And then he asked me to stay more, and then the week became a month, and then the months became many months. So I had to call my friends, my colleagues, to take care of my patients. And ultimately, I had to sell my house, my car, even my plane. I'm a pilot. I love to fly. And the months became years and then became a lifetime, because I found something that answered my deepest questions. And I found something that can answer everyone's deepest questions, not only intellectually, but through practice, can make us better human beings and can allow us to experience higher states of consciousness, which is the medium through which we experience our life. We experience our life through consciousness. So I was diving deep into the study of awareness and consciousness and what ultimate reality is. And if you ask me today, I would have in no way changed anything or made any regret or decision in a different way than what I have had the extreme chance to be able to go through that path of discovery and also scientific understanding.
I want to take a moment to reflect on your book, The Power of Caring, Dr. Nader. But not just the book, but there's a moment at the beginning of the book where you write eloquently about being a young physician, a young doctor, and you're sitting with a patient that's sick and afraid at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then you write at that moment, caring wasn't optional. It wasn't like it was one of many, many options. It was the only option. It was the only thing that made sense. And I wonder if we could start there, because I think that moment really captures so much of spirituality, philosophy, biology, theology.
Yeah, medicine is a vocation. And when one does something with full heart, with full being, not just as a profession to earn money, which it is, and it's fine. Earning money is no problem whatsoever. It's great. People who work hard should be compensated, and who do good job, good work should also get remunerated for it. There is no issue at all with that. But what makes one more fulfilled in one's life is to perform, as we say, one's duty, one's dharma, if you like to use it in that perspective, as the Bhagavad Gita tells us that one's performance in one's dharma is even better than trying to do something else, even, that sounds more laudable. And so in my heart and my feeling, I was doing what was needed. And that is where I felt that caring at this moment, this was one moment, but of course we all have similar moments and many that come through in our life under different situations. That's what is needed, that there is a connection between humanity at the level of what is needed right now. And there was no question in my mind that my presence was needed, my reassurance was needed. And so this was totally spontaneous. And we know that caring is wired in us as a human species. It's wired within us electrically in the brain, hormonally. Oxytocin gets secreted. You get feedback from dopamine to increase the desire to do it. And it helps us as a human species to be together, to create all the beautiful things we create. And it has, of course, a level which is beyond just those practical aspects, which is the evolution of life, the meaning of life, the expansion of oneself. And, all great traditions talk about do unto others what you would want them to do unto you, etc. And that is all an indication of a unity at the basis of diversity. So when I'm there in such a situation, it's almost like I'm caring for myself. The other person becomes like part of yourself. You don't analyze it like that intellectually, but spontaneously you react in a way that in fact expands you, because the giver almost always gains more than the receiver.
That 3 a.m. moment, was that, you mentioned oxytocin, brain neurons, so on and so forth. Was that theology? Was that spirituality? Was that biology? Or was that something that dissolves the difference between all of them?
I think I choose number 3 or number 4, which was the last one you said. It is, I don't see a difference. This is also one outcome of my lifetime research, and that question that you are raising from a specific angle. Is it mind? Is it body? This then brings us to the mind-body problem. Is it physiology? Is it some consciousness? Which is also primary. Does the physiology create consciousness, or does consciousness somehow appear as physical material level? And I have dealt with this all my life as a question, and come to the strong conclusion that consciousness is primary in reality. So the primary reality is not a material physical energy, but it's consciousness. And then the question becomes how consciousness appears as matter, as physicality. That is the concept of Maya, that we live through an illusion. But the way the Maya is usually understood is, in my perspective and my understanding, not the whole story. It's not that the objects don't exist and we are imagining them. It's not that the world is not as it is, we are imagining it. It's not like that. The world is the world, but the essence of what the world is made of is non-physical, non-material. And even physics today has come to the conclusion that there is a field, or it's coming to gradual theory and conclusion, that there is a unified field which is really non-physical in its essence, at the basis of all the other fields that appear, the electromagnetic field, the different quantum layers and quantum levels and quantum field theories, etc., and then particles, etc., etc. But all of this shows us that there is a strong support for a unified level of life, which is actually more consciousness than physicality.
So, double clicking on that, Dr. Nader, it seems that ancient traditions, philosophies, they understood the universe, they understood life experientially long before neuroscience came along and described it more mechanistically, the way you just eloquently did. And quite often in your writings, you quote from many traditions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Judaism, Islam. And they all circle back to a similar thing, this idea of daya, compassion, and caring. Why do you think so many cultures circle back to this as a central pillar or central virtue?
Because this is the essence of life. And again, in my book, I describe the reasons why. So it's not left on a moral level or, spiritual guidance, which are beautiful. But today, our world requires proof, either in logic, systematic proof, based on data or observations that we have, or on empirical research, which means you do it, research, as you know, where it's controlled studies and prospective analysis, and then do statistics, etc. And so when you put all of this together, you come back to the fact that those great traditions had enlightened individuals that were able to transcend the surface value of the ocean, just the waves on the surface, and go into the depths of themselves and discover that unity that is underlying all diversity. And therefore, the true compassion is not ultimately doing something good to somebody else, but it's actually doing something good to yourself through the opportunity that you have in somebody else. That is the beauty of karuna, of compassion, of caring. And that is that it strengthens you. Today we have a lot of problems in the coming up generation with sense of loneliness, sense of being isolated. They are on their own thing and they do things, and they expect to be cared for. And what they should know, and what actually this book shows, the power of caring, is that even if you care for others, you expand yourself. You start understanding that yourself is not limited in this physical body within that skin that you have. Yourself is something much deeper.
This teaches us something, or this reflects to us something that our Guru, Brahma Swami Maharaj, has often taught. This is a spiritual practice. It's a way of expansion. He had a phrase that said, "In the joy of others lies our own." And from the life of our Guru, we see this teaching that you're talking about in practice. When people would come to insult him, when people would come to put him down, discredit his work, he would open himself up. He would actually extend a hand to them. He would make sure they're looked after, even if they would spit in his face. And through the example that the Guru sets for us, we see that this teaching is not just an abstract concept, but it's something that we can live, because it's so important to have, for us at least, a living example, someone who exemplifies this teaching of consciousness, right? We learn in a Vedic Sampradaya, Vedic teaching, Dharmic teaching, that you, I, me, you're all Sat Chit Anand. This feeling of consciousness is at the very core of who we actually are. And there's a saying that I think, therefore I am, but actually the teaching that we grew up with is I am, therefore I think. And it's this sense of consciousness that really guides. Brahma Swami Maharaj, he set a very high bar for us on how to live dharmically. And I want to go back to that teaching that you talked about just a couple of moments ago from the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about following your dharma. And the Bhagavad Gita makes a very interesting statement that it's better to follow your dharma imperfectly than to do someone else's dharma perfectly. And this idea of appearing perfect is so prevalent in our culture, then that to do something imperfectly, it's almost at odds with who you are. It's so at odds with the performative nature of work, performative nature of life itself nowadays. I wonder what your thoughts are on that and what made you want to go down that path.
Yeah, this is really a beautiful point. And I use it a lot in the book to help understand boundaries, understand responsibilities, understand the sense of attachment, which also Krishna talks about, that you are a master of what you do, but not of the results of action. The fruits of action belongs to so many other factors. We can come back to that. Basically, people think they have to care more, or they have an image about what they should be doing in their life and what is, advisable to do. And they overextend themselves. And so that's why there is a chapter that discusses what is mine to do, what is mine to do, at what moment. That is why I talk about conscious caring, not just caring in an instinctive way or caring as a performance, do's and don'ts, etc. So that's how I should do, therefore I do it like this. But conscious caring is to be able to evaluate the situation, to evaluate your capacity of what you can do, what you cannot do, and therefore be in tune with yourself, and therefore be able then to perform in the best possible way. And that is what is mine to do. So the question of what is mine to do? We have the whole world nowadays, our young generation, they're exposed, they wake up in the morning, they're exposed to so many things that we couldn't even think about when we were growing up, myself at least in my age. The exposure was limited. But now we have the whole world falling on our young generation, which will be the leaders in the future. And they have to find a balance in terms of decision making. What do I do? What is my vocation? What is my place in this world? What can I carry? And what can I actually improve? What is it that is mine to do? And that is dharma. Dharma is acting in accordance with natural law. We come to this life with a baggage of DNA, a baggage of heredity, conditions that are there, and in the Vedic tradition, this is due to whatever we have accumulated in previous life, fine. And so this is the best conditions that we can ever have to make our life better. It might start with challenge for some reason, or it might start with plentiness and fulfillment on the surface level. That is another level. But when you see that the progress of life, how it evolves, how much bigger you become, how much you grow in your consciousness, how much you expand your awareness, that is the real purpose. And people think having more, or being looked at more, or being seen more through, I want to become maybe a famous athlete, or I want to make so much money, or I want to become an artist and be a Bollywood artist or a Hollywood actor or something like that, because I see this and I see that, and maybe I don't have the capacities and I might do it, but it's forced on me. It is not according to my conditions that will help me to grow in the best way and the fastest way. And sometimes adversity is an absolute wonderful opportunity to be able to actually overcome and grow with oneself, not to feel, a victim or overwhelmed by it. Life gives us the best chances to evolve in our awareness, in our spirituality, in fulfilling the meaning of life. And if we take it in the proper way, then we have the best chance to fulfill our dharma.
That's such a beautiful way of looking at life. I find myself wanting to go there as often as possible, to think of life not as something that's against you, but something that's for you. And in the Dharmic Life podcast, we often talk about this idea that life is a university. This universe is a university for our consciousness, our Satchit Anand, our Atma itself, to evolve and grow on this path that we've all been sort of embarked on. One of the things that we do within our Dharmic tradition is that concept of a daily prayer. We do a daily meditation, a prayer, what we call the morning puja, which keeps us grounded in this idea of, rather, instead of trying to reach for perfection, reach instead for letting go of the fruit of the action we're about to perform and make everything we do into an offering to the divine, in the offering to a higher power. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what is a practice that keeps you centered?
It is similar, prayer is addressing a power that is beyond us in a certain way. And that brings humility and the sense of, let thy will be done, Brahma Bhavati Sarati, that Brahma is the charioteer of life. And that is, when you see it through all traditions, if you look at the depths of it, you see that this is really the direction that they are guiding that. And so coming back to the point of what personally helps me is transcending, which means use transcendental meditation, which allows the mind to settle down from the surface level of thinking to go deeper and deeper towards Atma, towards the self, and dive into what we call pure consciousness, or in other terms, Atma. What happens is the mind settles down, and as the mind settles down, the body also settles down. And we know physiologically, through more than 600 scientific research studies, that there is improvement in the physiology. And this is one of the arguments I use in Consciousness is All There Is and the Power of Caring. And that is that how the physiology responds to what's happening in the mind. If you have a fearful idea, your heart rate goes up, etc., etc. It's an experience. In the Vedic tradition, there is that story about meeting a rope in the dark and thinking it's a serpent or a snake, and then getting afraid, and your whole physiology gets overwhelmed, whereas it's only a maya of an illusion of what it is. In fact, it's only something that is not harmful. And what this tells us is that the power of how we carry our thoughts, at what level we carry our thoughts. If it's on an agitated level, again, I go back to the ocean and the waves. If we are being tossed around on the surface level, life can be challenging, of course, if there is a storm, and we all meet storms. But if you can anchor yourself within yourself, then this is where you can meet any storm or meet any change on the surface with inner strength and stability.
Dr. Nader, you mentioned the idea of looking inward, and the idea of the Atma, and Atmanishta is the phrase that we use in our tradition. Understanding yourself to be not this body, but something different, the Atma, the Jiv within, which is eternal, Anadi. And then we have a community that surrounds us, our Sabha, our Satsang community, and they provide constant emotional and psychological support. They provide a mirror for us to reflect on and to improve from. We have examples in our gurus. I remember a story of Pramukh Swami. One of the young Swamis asked him to write a blessing in his book, in his diary, in English. And he asked him to write, "I bless you." And Pramukh Swami wrote, "I bless you" in English being not his first language. And when the Swami looked at the book, he saw that the I was lowercase. The I was lowercase and the bless you was uppercase. And he said, "Swami,
He said, Pramukh Swami, in English, the I should be capital when you're referring to yourself. And Pramukh Swami said that was essentially a reminder that within a spiritual pursuit, the I should always be small. And we have so many interactions and stories and things like this that we read. Yet, despite that, despite good intention, why is it that we still fall into this care, burnout, recover, care, burnout cycle? Why do the helpers feel exhausted? Why do the caretakers need care? Despite all of these things, what are the things that you have done in moments of exhaustion to kind of realign yourself and be able to provide the care that others expect from you?
This is beautiful. I haven't had the chance, but I want to maybe take this opportunity to tell you how much I admire the tradition you are in, and Pramukh Swami, the Swami Narayana, the BAPS organization is on top of the world in terms of knowledge and caring and seva and beautiful things for spiritual development and great inspiration. We think from the small self perspective, and we get that sense of ego and ego inflation and all of that, then we are mistaking this being what we are with what reality ultimately is not. In terms of practical applications, it is important also to realize that we can only give what we have. So if we have tiredness and fatigue and exhaustion and fear, unfortunately, when we want to help, this is what we actually project to the outside. We cannot help somebody if we don't have the strength to help him. We cannot give strength if we have weakness. We cannot give happiness if we have sadness. And we can try, but it's not natural and it's exhausting. So what I say and what I make sure that all those who read the books that I write and with whom I discuss is the importance also of self-care, of caring for oneself. And self-care is not selfish. Self-care is to say that I count too, and when I'm doing something, I want to do it for you in the best possible way. So putting boundaries sometimes, putting understanding in what is mine to do, at what time I do it, in conscious caring, and how much am I doing it for what? Am I doing it to control the other? Am I doing it as a performance so that the other sees that I am, a good person? Or am I doing it out of my deep level of care, of understanding, of unity and well-being? And so what I tell people who get overwhelmed or burnt out is to remember the responsibility towards oneself and take the time to meditate, to transcend, to go beyond, to refill yourself. See, if you have a car and the car runs out of fuel, you can't blame the car for putting it or taking it to the station and filling it with fuel. It won't help you if it doesn't have fuel. So it's a very simple equation. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to be realistic. And that's why, you presented at 3 a.m. in the morning in my introduction to the power of caring. And as you probably noticed, that the second paragraph says that at the same time, I had to realize that if I have to carry every family's fear on my shoulder, that I will not last and I will not be able to take care of anyone.
I think that's very true in my own experience. I think specifically, the older I've gotten, the more opportunities to make mistakes I've had. And one of the things I've learned regarding self-care and avoiding burnout is this idea that we are taught to provide grace and kindness to others, but quite often we forget to give ourselves that grace and kindness. So I've taught my children, I have 2 children, I've tried to teach them to be kind and compassionate with yourself as well, to treat yourself with a little bit of grace, and very importantly, be willing to forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made.
Beautiful. The book says, it's not about caring more, it's about caring better. And selfishness is to say, I matter, you don't matter. Whereas true reality, true care is, I matter too. You matter, but I matter too. And that's how I can help you better, because I take care of myself, and then I can care about you.
One thing that really inspires me from my tradition is this idea of bhakti, this idea of devotion, this idea of love that can help you connect with this higher form of consciousness, the Brahman and Parabrahman. Bhakti has been a very grounding force in my life through things like devotional songs, through things like listening to words of inspiration. That's gatha. That's something that we do on a regular basis. And for me, these things have been very grounding. Love has been the path, this divine, forming this connection to divine love has been a very nourishing part for my life. And I thought I'd share that.
So Maharishi emphasized to us that value of the heart, of the feeling. And bhakti is very powerful, because what is really bhakti is to surrender the smallness to the bigger value, to love. To love is to take the other as oneself. That's what we say, love. Love is the greatest link, the greatest power of connection, of putting, of transcending differences and unifying, of feeling one with the other. And what love gives is the ability to take others as oneself, to embrace others. That's how in love we are never small, we are bigger and bigger. And the bigger the love, the bigger the connection. And the divine love is connecting with the supreme, with pure consciousness, the higher level, the highest level of awareness, the highest level of consciousness. The supreme must be infinite consciousness, Krishna consciousness. It's the consciousness that knows everything, is everything. And that is the connection, the unification that is most powerful and most beautiful.
Something that resonated with me, Dr. Nader, in what you were saying about love, specifically, significant historic people from the Vedantic philosophy that embodied love, that were personifications of love. That reminds me of Pramukh Swami's guru, Yogiji Maharaj, who within our tradition is considered to be the embodiment of joy, the embodiment of compassion and love. And he had many amazing aphorisms. But the one that comes to mind currently is this idea that he used to say that the superintendent of all vices is ego. That anger, lust, greed, envy, and everything else is a result of ego. And when you're surrounded or you're close proximity to these great teachers, these great sages, you feel a sense of calmness. You feel a sense of purpose, a sense of unity. But then you go on with your life. And then you move away and you get caught up in work and family relations and traffic and taxes and headaches and everything else that comes with it. And it's very easy to forget these life lessons. So as we wrap up our conversation today, I would like to leave our listeners with some practical guidance from you. We know many people, members of the Indian diaspora, the immigrant generation in the West, that are very high achieving. We are good at chasing metrics. We are very good at achieving KPIs. We go to the right universities, we get the right jobs, we buy the right house, we hit the right tax bracket. Our children are doing well. But despite this high level of achievement, quite often many people feel less than fulfilled. They don't feel happy. They don't feel content. What advice from your life and your experiences would you give?
Thank you for a beautiful question. I often talk about the difference between being more and having more. The purpose of life is to grow and be more. By being more, then you are more and more fulfilled. And sometimes we mix up being more with having. Having more does help in some way. I don't want again to go against that. You might want to have more because why? Because it makes you feel that you are more. That's the reason why having more is helpful. And in some cases, fine. If you want to be more through having more, that's fine. But don't forget that the ultimate reality or the reason why having more makes you feel better, it's because you are feeling that you are growing more. And growing more is not just some physical growth. It's a growth of consciousness, the expansion of your awareness. Ultimately, and as you transcend, go beyond the surface, experience yourself, or practice bhakti, or do seva. Why you do seva? Because you feel this temple is yours. You are there. You belong there. I've met so many people who told me that they know exactly which stones are in the temple that they have carved, and it's so proud of it and beautiful. So they are there. You expand yourself, and that is what brings true happiness. So it's a question of perspective. I would love everyone to try Transcendental Meditation. I would be honored and delighted as many would read the book about caring, the power of caring, because I've written the first book on consciousness is all there is, and that is more, I must say, philosophy and science and intellectual analysis. This book, The Power of Caring, is from the heart, because caring is bhakti, is giving, is sharing, and that helps us grow more. And consciousness caring or conscious caring creates fulfillment, it creates a connected life, and supports all of these beautiful things that your tradition, which is so honorable and so supreme, is doing in so many ways.
Very well said, Dr. Nader. Growing up in America and seeing so many people in our community, we are very good at knowing or focusing on the things that we can count, and we lose sight of the things that actually count. And I think conversations like this and other conversations that we can have in these kinds of communities and these kinds of opportunities are so vital for helping people find their way.
Beautiful. It has been a delightful moment for me, and we look forward to staying in touch and honoring the highest good, which you are already upholding in so many ways.